The presentation of anarchism as social philosophy which aims at the emancipation, economic, social, political, and spiritual of the human race. The emancipation.
Anarchist Essays is brought to you by Loughborough University's Anarchism Research Group. For more information on the ARG, see the link in the show notes or follow us on Twitter at ARGLBORO.
Dangerous and Unprofessional Content, Anarchist Dreams for Alternate Nursing Futures by Jess Dillard-Wright and Danisha Jenkins. I'm Jess.
And I'm Danisha. With Dangerous and Unprofessional, we wanted to illustrate to nursing just how readily anarchist praxis complements nursing. Nursing purports to be about care, and it often is, but when we think about professionalized nursing as an apparatus of the healthcare industrial complex, we start to wonder whether professional nursing is about care at all.
The title of this paper, Dangerous and Unprofessional Content, came about when, in the course of sending each other papers, our second favorite love language, the first being anti-capitalist memes, Danisha's workplace called one of my papers in their respectability filters, blocking the content and calling it dangerous and unprofessional. This, of course, tickled us both, though I don't think this piece of lore made it to the final paper. Our time in nursing and as nursing faculty has given rise to many moments like this, small and large acts of governmentality designed to keep us in check through the entangled discourses of nursing and professionalism.
As we think through the unlikely pairing of nursing and anarchism, we start with a few words on nursing. Nursing is one of those things that most of us will experience in our lifetimes. For many listening, that reality has likely already come to pass. Nursing is a relational care praxis that draws on art, care, science, and community to support well-being, health, and disease prevention, as well as care and illness. Efforts to exercise proprietary claim to care and exercise those deemed unworthy to and of care, including nursing care, give rise to some of the most egregious and insidious structures that harm nurses and people who need care alike. The public imbues nursing with trust, an honor of dubious lineage that simultaneously confers pastoral power on nurses while enforcing docile maternal bodies.
In the history of nursing, the specter of Florence Nightingale is regrettably the first image conjured to mind. Nightingale serves as sort of a golden spike, fixing the popular and professional imaginary of nursing in a rigid Victorian schema, articulated through such virtues of Christian femininity as obedience, sacrifice, modesty, order, cleanliness. Nightingale, however, was not the first nurse or the only nurse. Nursing care is not now and has never been proprietary to professionalized nursing. Well before Nightingale's arrival on the scene, nurses were nursing, people were caring for one another. This begs the question, who does the emblem of Nightingale as nursing serve in the discipline of nursing? Nursing is afforded one history, one image, one ontology, a singular trope on which our history and present balances at the expense of all possible pasts, all other stories of what nursing has been and could be.
This singular vision forecloses on alternate possibilities, stifling dissent, denying complicity, demanding obedience, enforcing white heteropatriarchy, establishing and reinforcing nursing's place in the paternalist hospital family. And as long as nurses cleave to this, refusing to recognize what is so clearly unfolding before them in the necropolitical economies of healthcare, we have to wonder what it means to nurse, to care.
In our collective experiences as professional nurses living and working in nursing leadership spaces in the United States, we can confidently say that the specter of anarchism raises the hackles of many, if not most, of our compatriots. Professionalized nursing recognizes the rejection of capitalist hierarchies and oppression as a rejection of the profession itself, which makes the conversation tough because it currently operates fully enclosed by the logics of late-stage capitalism in concordance with the carceral, economic, political, and pastoral logics that structure the healthcare industrial complex. American nursing is fundamentally at odds with the generative unruliness of anarchism's epistemology. This irreconcilability grows from professionalized nursing's colonial roots, conjured into being as the managerial practice we know today. Nursing as a discipline has been loath to loosen its grip on, or even directly engage with, the white cis heteropatriarchal phallogocentrism that structures its hegemony. Nursing's foundation of and continued adherence to the values of obedience, religiosity, white supremacy, imperialism, and capitalism allows nursing to derive its power from existing dominant power structures, which are squarely at odds with the ethos and praxis of anarchism. But it doesn't have to be this way. Anarchist praxis gestures at other possibilities, resistance to the carcerality of nursing, hospitals, healthcare, and capitalism.
If we let go of the trappings of professionalism, it is clear that anarchism's liberatory promise in the context of nursing are profound. Under the auspices of neoliberalism, nurses' physical and tangible abilities to care exercise the necropolitics of racial capitalism, dictating who must live and who will die. Through anarchism, nurses might explore a labor founded in community, relation, joy, recreation, hope, unhitched from the morally bankrupt structures of care driven by profit. Anarchism gestures toward community, survival, and mutual aid, redolent with potentiality for nursing and care. Central to this effort is the lived understanding that the state is not coming to save us, is not part of the solution. Instead, we invite nurses and the folks for whom nurses care to dream, to imagine what it would take for care to be afforded to all people.
Visions of care for all people, a nursing practice freed from the death worlds in which we currently operate, leaves behind capitalism and empire and exploitation to instead focus on community, on care, on the world around us. At present, the nursing profession is ill prepared to reckon with the realities of violence. This violence is already here, it has been here. And professionalized nursing is part of this violence, even as it refuses to recognize this. So nurses need to develop the skills to recognize violence as it happens and resist in all its forms, subtle and more overt forms of violence. Although nurses are ill prepared now to navigate anarchist present futures, Emma Goldman found nursing an apt career for moving anarchist thought and philosophy into practice. Nursing afforded Goldman unique opportunities to see, understand, and experience people's struggles. Because of this proximity to struggle, nursing can be a powerful vehicle by which liberatory philosophies might translate into meaningful, practical work.
Nurses are also quite comfortable with the dynamic complexity of human interaction and experience, in part because nurses work in the muck of the downstream tragedies of existence. Because of this, we think nurses could appreciate the diversity of tools offered by anarchism in meeting individual needs through collective action, which requires triage, different strategies for different purposes, and different people attending to the nuances of people, environments, roles, and occasions. This parallels the way that more familiar tools of caring diverge, contingent on a variety of variables. For someone birthing a baby, care will be markedly different from the tools required to administer CPR to a person in cardiac arrest. Different tools and processes, but care just the same.
Nurses must not only do the anarchy, but cultivate a knowledge, ethics, and practice that is useful in an anarchist world. What does this look like? As Goldman articulated, there's no ironclad anarchist program to be played out. The social construction of anarchism stands for the, quote, spirit of revolution in whatever form against everything that hinders human growth. Once nurses identify what they're doing to hinder human growth, nursing can itself decide what resistance might look like in terms of how, when, where, and who practices nursing, as well as developing the tools nurses need along the way in community with folks who need nursing care. We now turn to some more specific interventions for nursing practice. The first is direct action.
Nurses have countless opportunities every day to exercise direct action, if they choose them. For example, nurses can refuse to wheel the person without shelter to the curb. Nurses can go to the media to lend their expertise, speak for themselves, and amplify the priorities of nursing. Nurses can blow the whistle on conditions, environments, and practices that jeopardize public safety. Nurses can make sure their uninsured patient returns home with ample wound care supplies. Nurses can refuse to offer information to immigration and detention police. Nurses can choose not to cooperate with legislated mandates that harm patients. Nurses can take their lunch breaks. Nurses can refuse to clock out and refuse to labor unpaid. Nurses can strike.
In addition to direct action, nurses can cut the cop shit. Educator Jeffrey Morrow defines cop shit as, quote, any pedagogical technique or technology that presumes an adversarial relationship between students and teachers. Nurse educators Philip Derbyshire and David Thompson extended cop shit to nursing education, wondering why, quote, some educators, schools, and health services seem to believe that the best way to prepare students and new RNs is for this mantle of responsibility is by refusing to trust them at all. Steeped in such educational tradition, it's little wonder that, upon graduating from nursing school, nurses take cop shit with them to the care environment.
Habituated to cop shit through distrust and control, nurses sometimes project authority over and disdain for the people entrusted to their care. The very notion of compliance, common parlance to describe the degree to which someone is cooperating with healthcare orders, is predicated on cop shit, as if the only set of ideas worth thinking with or about are those originating from the healthcare industrial complex. While this might be a more subtle example of cop shit, others are explicit. Nurses are pressed into service for various law enforcement agencies under the auspices of mandated reporting. Mandated reporting is ostensibly about protecting vulnerable folks, but often forces people and families into the carceral structures of welfare agencies, sometimes with catastrophic impact. In the United States, these acts of reporting exercise disproportionate harm on Black and Brown families. Cop shit has to stop. In its place, nursing could move toward community survival and mutual aid instead.
Some anarchist commitments, such as mutual aid, readily align with the work that nurses already do. Defined by Dean Spade as, quote, the establishment of systems of care, solidarity, and generosity that arise outside of existing structures of the state and conventional institutions that are able to ease the constraints and foster well-being. Mutual aid is something that nurses engage in every day, both inpatient, in hospital settings and outside, through the support and collaboration of team members. A key area of imagination must be devoted to nurses practicing mutual aid beyond and despite the existing structures and conventional institutions in which we reside. Gaining access to a hospital bed requires a long series of tragedies and triumphs, so nurses must get out of the hospital and venture into the streets to understand and explore what mutual aid and community survival looks like and what it could look like if and when more nurses break down institutional walls.
We have examples of anarchism and caring practice to draw from. Those stories that have survived attempts at institutional forgetting and silencing, such as Black Panther and nurse Marie Branch's work to implement anti-racist philosophy and practice in nursing, even in such obstructionist environments as the American Nurses Association. Her co-founding of the Los Angeles Black Panther Party's free clinic in 1969 was demonstrative of the potential that nursing could free itself from a practice dictated by payment models and elitist structures. There are others, both known and unknown, who resist and resisted the harms of the institution to bring caring practice to the people, for the people, and to help one another survive another day through joy and community.
Joy is not the first word that comes to mind when it comes to nursing, I think. Nursing can be joyful. Certainly, attending births and connecting with folks for whom we care and nurturing students as they learn and grow comes with relation and community and sometimes joy, good feelings. Even attending deaths can be resonant and rich in connection and support, even if joy might not quite be the right word. However, there's little space for joy in nursing under capitalist regimes. Every Band-Aid, acetaminophen tablet, piece of gauze, minute on the clock, step in the hospital is metricized. Every dollar squeezed. Every hospital day scrutinized. And sad people are easily managed, more readily docile. Making the case for joyful militancy, Bergman and company explained that, quote, empire's hold is increasingly effective. It suffuses our emotions, relationships, and desires, propagating feelings of shame, impotence, fear, and dependence. It makes capitalist relations feel inevitable and, for some, even desirable. This affective hold demands conformity, including in nursing, and gives way to alienation and estrangement.
Rather than succumbing to the alienation and estrangement of nursing under capitalism, we might instead recognize that, quote, joy is as desubjectifying process, an unfixing, an intensification of life itself. Enlivening in the faults and fissures of systems as they presently exist, joy is expansive, generative, and animating. Rooted in the co-constitution of feeling and thinking and doing, Joy lives in potential, in community, in struggle, in resistance, in care, and in nursing. Anarchism offers this up not as a way to avoid pain or strife or hard work, but rather, quote, to embrace the conviviality and joy that comes with being together as radical equals, not as vanguards and proletariat on the path towards the transcendental empty promise of utopia or no place, but as the grounded immanence of the here and now of actually making a new world in the shell of the old. Acknowledging the personal risk associated with the ideas we are advancing in the present, we cannot help but be renewed in our own praxis of hope by the possibilities of what we could build together in nursing.
Nurses and the folks who need their care must find spaces and communities to celebrate, laugh, cry, love, and challenge one another to find joy. We must find one another in order to cultivate community so that when one needs rest, another can take up the charge. Collectively and militantly practicing hope, joy, and a radical vision for what nursing could be if we chose to make it is in fact one of the most important acts of resistance of all. We must find others who refuse to accept that the profession and work that has hurt us and the people we care for so severely is all that nursing will ever be. There is danger in sharpening nurses as instruments of resistance. It risks healthcare as we know it today, and it risks the crumbling of an empire. We will need today to cultivate communities of care because times are hard and becoming harder all the time.
Nothing we propose here is new. Black, Indigenous, queer, disabled, and poor communities' very existences rely on the same sort of resistance we describe here and have since the dawn of this country's borders and long before. The realities unfolding in front of us are clear. States are failing. Hospitals are failing. Professionalized nursing as we know it today is failing. Nurses are ill prepared to reckon with what we might expect in collapse. The violence is already here. It has been here. Violence will escalate as authoritarianism continues to rise, as the human-driven climate catastrophe continues unabated, as people flee hostile weather disasters, as resources grow scarcer, as disease and pestilence arise from the increasing human-wildlife encounters, and as colonized peoples rise up. The skill set that nurses need to develop includes recognizing violence as it happens and resisting violence as it becomes more overt. Nurses have tremendous potential to help one another survive, but we must recognize the crisis before us and, critically, believe in our collective capacity to build a better world. The moment we stop believing in our capacity to shift realities is the moment it ceases to be possible.
Out of the hospital and into the streets.
Thank you for listening. To help others find Anarchist essays, please rate and review us wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're interested in anarchist ideas, why not check out the journal Anarchist Studies? For over 20 years, Anarchist Studies has been publishing original research on the history, theory, and practice of anarchism. For more information, visit www.lwbooks.co.uk/anarchist-studies.